I must have just turned 21, and I was looking forward to a phone call. I think it must have been late September. That needs a little bit of sweetness. And it was probably one of the most important phone calls at that point in my life. You know, at that point, it was probably the biggest phone call. And I was there, quite nervous, quite excited, and then the phone rang. And I had to do that thing that you have to do when you're a bit nervous about a phone call. I had to just wait a few seconds so that I didn't sound as though I was being desperate. And I picked up the phone call, and it was a lovely lady called Amanda, and she said to me, "George, you've done it. You've got the job at Creed." But it was the first, full paid job, and it was pretty extraordinary. I had a 12-week contract at Creed, agency work in Harvey Nichols. And from moment one, you were told that Creed were the best, and I believed it. They knew that I was very excited about it, of course. I had loved Creed for a whole year since that period, and I knew that it was a big deal. First time I ever smelt Millésime Impérial was absolutely amazing, and that was in 2011, and I thought that it was unbelievable. And still to this day, I think it is my favourite fragrance of all time, and so that's a 10-year commitment. When I smelled Aventus for the first time, I remember thinking that is pretty much just exactly how a man should smell. And yeah, when I was working for them, you got the vibe and you got the ethos that they were the creme de la creme of fragrance. Of course, like Tom Ford, and their private line was more popular and it sold more, but Creed were more exclusive, they were more desired, they were more of an aspirational kind of brand. And for the most part, they could actually make that claim. They claimed that they had the best ingredients, the best work ethic, the best way of making fragrances. Everything was individualized, it wasn't sort of factory made, it was more a handmade process. And they could make that claim, and they could say it. Those fragrances at that time, between 2011 to about 2016, were amazing. There was only one thing that sort of concerned me, and that is that every now and then somebody would come in who'd last bought Creed in the early noughties or late 90s, and they would go, "Yeah, I'll have some Silver Mountain water, I'll have some Arolfa or whatever," and we'd make it all the way to the till, and I'd say, "That's £175, please," and they'd have a genuine look of shock on them, and they'd go, "I mean, what are you talking about? These were only 90 quid 10 years ago." And so the price increase had already started well into the 90s, this just kind of continuous annual price lift, to the point where we are now, where I don't even know how much Silver Mountain water or Millésime Impérial costs retail. It's going to be over 200, maybe nearly £300. But the ultimate point of this section here is that they were the creme de la creme. They were well respected. They thought of themselves. They announced to us, the workers, that we were working for the greatest fragrance brand, the greatest niche fragrance brand of all time. And we believed it. And whenever I walk into Selfridges or Harvey Nichols or whatever, there is somewhat of an arrogance with the Creed staff. Not their fault, it just comes with the job. You do genuinely believe that nobody can touch you, nobody's making the fragrances that you are, and that their ingredients and that their quality is the highest of the land, and there is no argument. To put into context and to put into a real sort of conversation of how events has changed everything would be quite difficult to do. I'd need a whole video to do that. It would be 40 minutes. It did change everything. It changed everything from how fragrances were made, how niche fragrances were perceived, how spending money on fragrances as a whole was perceived. It changed the idea of retail, but retail was already changing. Retail was already dying thanks to the internet. So much. And of course, so Aventus was the first Creed fragrance to be really targeted with clones. And the first clones were a very cute attempt, very simplistic, very straightforward. There were some highlights. My personal favourite at the time was Lomani AB Spirit Silver. But there wasn't really any perfect Creed clones. There weren't any really great Aventus clones at the time. There still aren't today. Aventus is actually a very, very difficult fragrance to clone. And 4 years ago, I did this, well, I felt at the time, infamous review of Pineapple Vintage by Parfums Vintage. And I had two things in my mind, well, three things I had in mind when I did that review. I got really aggressive with it, got really angry about it. I threw one of the fragrances in this, I don't think it was a bath, I don't know if it was a bathtub, a pig trough, whatever it was, because I just couldn't wear it. It was unbearable to wear. And that caused outrage. People were like, how can you do this? You know, like, that's so negative and that's so disrespectful. But I had three things in my mind. The first one is that the fragrance did genuinely suck. And as I said, Aventus is quite hard to clone because you have the citrus element, but you also have the dark tar, smoke, birch, oak moss. And you put those two together and you don't have the experience, the ability, or the resources and proper ingredients. It smells like paint thinner or Domestos or like a cleaning product. I've actually found out that it's not just Parfums Vintage. There are some other fragrances that have that when they try to clone Aventus. Mont Blanc Explorer did the right thing. They just completely turned down all of the darker elements and they just went straight for the citruses and the fruity elements, which worked in so many ways because that's a great designer mainstream kind of smell, and it takes away that sort of difficult paradox of getting those citrusy and sweaty, birchy elements that are in the real Aventus. So they did really well. I did this review and I torched it, and I had three things in mind. First one, sucked. Second one, clones, they seem almost prestigious now, you know? They seem as though they're quite a big deal, and it's almost like an aspiration to have a clone in your collection. But back then, you know, clones were like at markets. That, you know, I would go to the Lee Market or the Warrington Market where I used to live, and there'd be some dodgy 50, 60-year-old guy selling like 1 billion or Le Mans or Le Mans or Petrol, Only the Courage. And there'd be knockoffs, and that's what they'd be seen as. They'd be seen as shady, stupid knockoffs just to make a quick buck on people who couldn't afford the real thing. That's sort of the stigma around it, and it sort of still is. And the other thing that was going through my mind was, I think I was a little bit protective, a little bit defensive, because I'd worked for Creed and they'd treated me really well, and they'd put into my mind that, you know, Creed were a big deal and all of that. So I felt genuinely kind of protective over Creed, and so I did that review. I look back at that review now and I think it's actually fairer than people think that it is. Don't worry about it, just go through, it's fine. Pretty cold, isn't it? Pretty freezing. Have a good day. Anyway, I think it was actually kind of a much fairer review than people sort of said. But I felt comfortable trashing it. I felt comfortable sort of totally destroying it. One of the wildest comments on that video, probably one of the wildest comments I ever had in my life, was from a fellow reviewer called GreggyBoy76, who said, you can't do this, don't say this about, don't be so disrespectful and so negative about this startup company. They've just started up. Your negative opinion could affect their sales and affect them as a company. And to that, I have two things to say. First of all, Greggy Boy, as a reviewer, you have literally just sort of, I mean, if you want to just showcase to the world that your opinion will change on a dime because you think that you want to protect sort of like a company or a company's interests, especially if it's a startup. If you're happy to sort of showcase that you would change that to accommodate that, then mate, that's your hill to die on, not mine. But second of all, let's have no illusions here. These clone companies, they're not like startup brands like Daniel Gallagher or, you know, Zoologist or, you know, Rainier. They're not like small indie brands who have got like a new voice and are trying to like give you new fragrances and show you what can be done with scent, and like a new artistic sort of venture. No, mate, they're clone companies. They're bootleggers. They're your dodgy uncle from the 1990s going to car boot sales, selling pirated VHS tapes. They're nothing more than that. And this whole kind of weird prestige around clone companies that are trying to make money off of other people's work. I don't know where this suddenly came from. I've made more original content in my videos than any of these clone companies have with any of their fragrances, because they're just taking other people's work. And that's how it was seen for quite a while, these mad companies. And they had sort of like propaganda of, oh, well, we're influenced by, or my favourite one, we're a tribute to. This is a tribute to, we're selling you a tribute to Aventus. But if I got like Maham Raza's passport and bank account details and pretended to be him as a tribute and then flew around the world using his money, I don't think he'd be too happy with that. So this was where it was. These bloody clone companies, what can you do about them? They're very silly, and you know, they're popular, but they're benign ultimately, and they certainly could never reach the heights of quality of the actual fragrances that they were trying to copy. So everything's fine. I think the alarm bell started ringing with me when I smelt Casino Royale by Dua. That was that's a very at the time that was the most impressive clone I'd ever smelt. That was so close to Baccarat Rouge 540. It was a bit worrying, and it just sort of made me pause. By the way, the illusion that you're given by many reviewers that these clone companies have got a batting average of 1,000 when it comes to their clones, just like perfect, 90%, 90%, 90% similar, 90% similar, perfect, indistinguishable, it's the same fragrance, you can't believe it, it's a load of bollocks, it's a load of propaganda. You know, a lot of these clone companies, they'll just give a lot of these reviewers free bottles, maybe even, you know, something even spicier to sweeten the deal, and they'll just say, all right, yeah, it's 99%, it's absolutely perfect clone ever. And so you're given this illusion, this consistent illusion, that Dua and Alexandria are flawless every single time, but they're not. For every one great Dua, there's about 3 that are terrible. One of the worst ones I've smelt is the Vanilla Fatale Dua clone. Shite, absolute shite. But I saw reviews saying, oh, it's perfect, it's brilliant. It's not. It's not. But Casino Royale, that was good. That was very good. And then we come to this. Milestone. Millésime Impérial, of course. I bought this, of course, as you know, to destroy it and to sort of ridicule it. But when I smelt it, I thought, that's kind of problematic. You see, Creed, for the past few years, their fragrances have become more muted, more blurred, less peaks in a way. Like Millésime Impérial itself has this great sea salt opening, but there's something not quite right with it. There's something not quite there. I do actually have an original 2016 bottle as a backup bottle, but I worked for Creed. I know what Millésime Impérial smells like. I know what all the Creed smell like off by heart. And when I smell them recently, and in the past 3 years, there's something wrong. There's something blurred. There's something missing. There's something dimmed. And that did worry me. And then Armaf came out with Milestone. And when I smelt this, I really started to get nervous, because I thought the peaks and the valleys that I remember from Millésime Impérial, the peaks of the sea salt, then the lemon, then the orange, then that sort of watermelon-y thing going on, that's in here. This was not a perfect fragrance by any stretch of the imagination, but it was great. So much so that Millésime Impérial had the foundations, so I'll layer it. I'll put Millésime Impérial on first, and I'll put this on. It's almost as if with the Armaf fragrance, that's like the walls, the paintings, the house, all of the furniture, all of the decor, but it was missing the foundations still. And that was odd. But it did make me wonder, it made me worried, because of course those Creed prices are still going up, their quality is still getting less, but yet this milestone fragrance is nowhere near the same price, but yet it's doing well. Then we came to this, and alarm bells really started ringing when I saw Andrea's review of this. I'll show you a clip from it.
In the opening of Club de Nuit Sillage, you're going to be hit with that fresh and icy cool DNA that Silver Mountain is known for, but I pick up on 4 distinct differences. The first is that Sillage is noticeably more citrusy, with a very nice enhanced dose of that bergamot. The second difference is that Sillage has a more of a sweet creaminess to it, where in Silver Mountain I barely get any sweetness at all. Third is that the inkiness is extremely toned down and much more in the background. Lastly, to me Sillage has more of a bright, aromatic and slightly louder opening, where Silver Mountain water, although still very fresh, comes off a bit more dense and subdued.
You see, she's describing this fragrance and she thinks that there's supposed to be a difference between what she's describing and what Silver Mountain water is supposed to smell like. But what I thought was, what she was describing when she was describing this fragrance was Silver Mountain water from 2013, and I thought, this can't be true, this can't be what I think is going to happen here. And so I bought a small decant of Silver Mountain water, like the smallest, and I put it on, and I put that on side by side, and I just burst into laughter, because this officially smells more like Silver Mountain water than Silver Mountain water does now. This smells like a 2013 Silver Mountain water, and it's pretty much bang on perfect, including, and I don't know how they've done it, the foundations. Like I said with our Armaf Milestone, the Milli Imperial clone, something missing, but with Sillage, the foundations, the peaks and the valleys, they've done it all. And they've created a fragrance that smells like a 2013 version, the best version of Silver Mountain water, or one of the better versions. And so now what do? Now we're in trouble. Now Creed's really in trouble. Because, I mean, they'll always have their namesake, right? They'll always be Creed. But their fragrance quality has gone down so much, and it's become blander and blander, and their prices have gone higher and higher and higher. And then Armaf, to me, this isn't just like a clone. This is a statement. And this is almost like calling Creed's bluff. This is saying, we can officially do your shit better than you can now. And it's getting to the uncomfortable point where I'm thinking to myself, if I want to recommend you Silver Mountain water, I don't even know if I should recommend you Silver Mountain water anymore. I'm thinking, I should be recommending you this. This would have been completely unheard of. This is a complete paradigm shift. And Dua, when they released Dua Man, which was the Lamal clone, and I smelt it when I was with Chris, and that actually smelt more like Lamal than Lamal does now. What is happening here? What is going to happen here? This is a scary time, especially for a company like Creed, who really genuinely think that they're still beasts. They still think that they're the best. They think they're untouchable, but they're not. They're officially not anymore. And as I said, what Andrea was describing in her review was Silver Mountain water from 8 years ago, which is gone. And the only remnants of it, apart from, like, I don't know, 500 quid on eBay, is this. And this is as close as you're going to get. It's too close for comfort. It is closer than it should be and than it has any right to be. And it's only like £35. And I don't think that Creed are worried. Why would they be? But the fact of the matter is that they should be, because they're going down. They're not just going down from these clones, but the quality of their fragrances is so low that they're going to be overtaken. And I think that the company that's going to overtake them ultimately is Roja. Roja Dove. Think about this, right? With Roja, they're getting their best fragrances and they're making them cheaper. The Parfum Cologne version, they took Enigma, they took the quality of it and they made it even cheaper. A completely different paradigm from what Creed are doing, which is making their fragrances worse and making them more expensive. With clones that are more accurate and more detailed and more representative of what Creed did than Creed does now, and with these other niche houses clipping at their heels, Creed, I worked for you, I loved you, but what's your answer going to be? Because your bluff has officially been called. This is a 5 out of 5 fragrance. It's unbelievable. It's groundbreaking, it's earth-shattering, it's terrifying. It's up to you now. What are you going to do? What are we all going to do?